Hi friends, welcome back to my sewing room. Hope you've been doing well the last couple of weeks. I've been looking forward to getting back in here and sharing my makes with you. I just made myself a cup of tea and got myself a glass of water and I'm ready to roll. There's something about contact lenses and braces that make you realize when you're dehydrated. The eyes get dry and the braces start to stick to the inside of your mouth. That is no fun. Oh well, hopefully not long to go on the braces. The tea I'm drinking today it's a green tea with cherry and vanilla flavour, and it was given to my husband as a gift along with a bunch of other teas, and I've never heard of the make before. Harney and Sons Limited out of New York. Never heard of them, but it tastes pretty good and it'll give me something to sip when I get dry today. So first things first, the apron I was telling you about last time that I made and I dip dyed, I added a seahorse to it. So this is what it looks like now. This square came out of a quilting panel and I just steamed the heck out of it because it was wonky. How many quilt panels are wonky, honestly? You think you're going to make something that's nice and square, and it's definitely not square. So I got my steam iron and I tried to get it as straight as possible, and then what I did is I applied some light heat and bond to the back of it, applied it to the apron and just stitched around a couple of times to hold it there. And I've actually been wearing it and using it in the kitchen. It almost feels too nice to use, but I made it to use, so don't be daft, Nicola. So this panel is one I haven't yet cut into, but it's the same as the other one, and it has an octopus on it, and it has a pair of dolphins, and then there's the seahorse, of course, and the crab. I just love the colours in this. Absolutely gorgeous colours. So of course when this came into the store where I work, I couldn't resist it. Sometimes I buy this sort of thing fairly quickly because I want it and I want it now. Other times I wait to see whether I really need it or not. Of course, needing and wanting are two different things, but this stuff I wanted from way before, and then I ended up caving and getting some of it. I also bought the coordinates for it, so it has this beautiful fish print that coordinates with it, and it has a flowery octopus fabric. This is called Ocean in Bloom. Nothing strange about octopuses and flowers, right? Totally normal. And then this blue fabric, which is sea stars. And it's just a coordinate which you can use in the background. It's also the print that goes around the panels. And this one too, the stripe. The trouble with buying such a pretty group of fabrics is that I don't really like cutting into them. It's almost like you just want to collect them and look at them and fondle them now and again and not cut into them. But hey, I've started cutting into this now, so it's good to go. It's fair game. I'm going to have to come up with another project for this. I will put it back here in my cotton stash, and I will definitely come up with something else to make. I'm really glad to be home today. I know I've mentioned a couple of times how stressful work's been lately, and the last couple of weeks have been the most stressful yet. They found a new manager for the store, and let's just say she didn't work out, because if I get onto that topic, I could be ranting for a long time. She didn't work out. She was there for 2 weeks and then they let her go. So we now have a new person who's manager, who's absolutely lovely and was already working at the store. And so they are still hiring because they need to replace me. And I was supposed to finish on the 5th of August. That was my giving my notice date. I gave them a month. Well, I've extended it. It was looking like they were going to be really struggling without me for the following week. So I scheduled myself for 3 more days after the 5th and gave them a new ultimate deadline. This is the ultimate will not be changed. I will not change my mind. I will not be convinced to give in deadline of the 19th. That way I will definitely be done by my birthday on the 24th. And I can have a little party for my birthday and for having a rest from work. And we'll see how that goes. I think I'm going to enjoy it a lot. So what have I been making this week? I figured it was time I had a crochet project, and I wanted something pretty easy, something that didn't take up a lot of brain space and maybe used some of the stash. I found the perfect thing. It's living in here, which is a bag I made, and it didn't turn out quite perfectly because Mrs. Slapdash managed to bubble the interfacing. So for some reason, it's looking a little rough. I don't know if you can tell, but it's not nice enough to give. And so I'm using it myself. I'm using a 6mm hook. I recommend these hooks if you like ergonomic hooks. You like this kind of hook. These are KnitPro Waves. I bought them from Wool Warehouse in the UK. I love Wool Warehouse. woolwarehouse.co.uk. Even though I'm in Canada, I can order from them. I can get them to show me what the Canadian equivalent is, and their shipping is super cheap. It used to be £7 for just about anything. So I never had to spend more than £7 on shipping. I think it's 10 now, but totally worth it. And it arrives in 2 weeks, which is perfectly acceptable. So I bought every single one of this size. I think I mentioned these a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about my crochet roll and showing you what I'd made to keep all my hooks in. KnitPro Waves are the bomb. It was a bit of a gamble because I hadn't tried them before, and I looked at them and I had seen other styles of hook online like Clover Amour and things like that. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go for it. And I bought one in every size. I love them. So we're going back all the way to 2019 here. This yarn is so pretty. And to tell you what it is, I'm going to have to refer to my handy dandy notebook here because I'm having a brain fart. If you like notebooks, by the way, this is awesome. This was a set of 3 notebooks I got. I think I got it from Amazon. And they look like vintage sewing patterns. It's a set of 3, and I think there are 2 lined and 1 blank, or the other way around. And when I fill them up, I think I'm going to have to buy more because I love them so much. Okay. Sidetracked again. So this yarn is Louisa Harding Giardino. Hope I'm saying that right. And the color is Lily del Valle. It's a cotton acrylic DK. And as I said, this just had to be a super easy project. I just needed something brainless. I did find a pattern on Ravelry that I was going to follow. I don't think I'm even going to mention the name of it because it was so basic and had so many instructions missing in it. I don't think it's worth even saying the name of it. But it did give me the inspiration to do this. So this is what I've got so far. all it is clusters of 3 double crochets, treble if you're in the UK, with 3 chains. And so it's really open. I'm using a bigger hook than you'd normally use with DK. Really open, and at the moment it's about the length of my height. So it's about 5'4" long. And I'll probably just keep on going for a while. Because it's so thin and airy, you could wrap this around your neck a couple of times and it would be perfect. Not something you'd wear for warmth maybe, but something for decoration. And I really love the colours in this. It's got rust and lime and turquoise. And yeah, keeps changing. Keeps your interest because the colour keeps changing as you crochet. So last time I showed you some new yarn, which is in here, and it is Jody Long Coastline, and I got the 3 colours, which were these 3, and I asked at the time if anyone had any suggestions what I could make with it. Someone gave me a really good suggestion. It was this pattern. It's called Nightshade by Lisa Mutch. It's a 3-colour shawl, and it's garter stitch plus a sort of lacy section, and then you change colour, and then you do more garter stitch, another lacy section, and so on. It was kindly suggested by AGA Jordan 3075. So thank you for making that suggestion. I'm going with it. The only thing I'm having to consider is that even though it uses 3 colours and I've got 1 ball of each, 100-gram ball, I think it's 200 meters, the first colour will be fine because the yardage is okay. The second 2 I may not have quite enough. So what I thought I might do is I'll do the garter stitch section, and instead of doing 3 repeats of that lacy part, I might only do 2. I'm hoping it works out. It'll turn out smaller, and also because it's written for DK and a 5mm hook, I'm using a worsted weight and a 5mm hook. So the knitting is a little denser. The stitch gauge is actually a little tighter than the pattern asks for, but I think if it's stretched when it's blocked, it'll be fine. But I'm going to have to budget my yarn carefully for the second 2 colours because I don't want to run out. This is what I have so far. That little stitch marker is just to show the right side so I don't forget which side I'm increasing on. I'm doing 2 increases at each end of my right side rows and then just knitting on the wrong side row. And I know I did say that I was not going to start this until I had finished work and I was sitting on the beach enjoying my hiatus. However, I needed some knitting therapy and I started it anyway. And I'm glad I did. It's really simple knitting and it's enjoyable, and the yarn is really pretty. It's my favorite color. So, you know, girls got to do what a girl's got to do. I'm really pleased with that so far. Just got to be careful about the yardage. Oh, and I'll just show you this while I have the opportunity. I made quite a few cake holders a few years ago, and what I meant by that is that when you have yarn from a store in a hank. You wind it into a cake. Sometimes the cakes can fall apart on you, or sometimes you buy those cake yarns that were super popular not long ago, and maybe you're feeding from the middle and you don't want it all to get crazy messy in your yarn bag. So I crocheted quite a few of these. Now this one has a handle and a little hole, so you can actually loop it through. Some of them are just plain around the top. I've made quite a few different size ones. There is no pattern. I just start with a circle, and when I think it's wide enough, I do a little round through the back loop to do the turn, and then work straight until I think it's deep enough. These have been really helpful, really useful for keeping my yarn under control. And so there's my beautiful turquoise yarn living in there. And not getting tangled, she said optimistically. Because work's been so all-encompassing lately, I have been pretty drained when I've been at home. I have managed, as you can see, some couch crochet and some couch knitting while we were watching Tour de France updates and Tour de France Femme updates, because the only sporting events my husband watches are cycling, and I've got really interested in it too. And it's just lovely seeing all the views of France, places that we might have been by way back in the past. One year, I think it might have been 1991, which doesn't seem that long ago until you do the math. We went to France and we decided to go to one of the villages that the Tour de France was going through. And we had no idea of the entourage that happens with the Tour de France. You tend to think, okay, I'm going to stand at the side of the road, I'm going to see a few cyclists go by. No, it's not that simple. So you get all of the advertising vehicles. So you get little cars that look like donuts, which are bakery ads. So you get all this advertising that goes through the crowds ahead of the bikes. And then you see all these cool cars with their ads plastered on them for Shimano and all those other things that cyclists need. And then you get the cyclists who are heading out at the front of the stage. And everyone's cheering and clapping like mad. And then you get the peloton. And so it feels like it's all advertising, a few vehicles, and suddenly whoosh, the cyclists have come and gone. And hey, it made a nice change to actually see it in person. Of course, you see more of it when you're at home watching it on the TV. And with YouTube, you can just subscribe to the updates every day and enjoy them. It was good to see that the women's one was well supported as well. And because so many sports seem to be focused so much on the men and not on the women. The one thing I did sew this week, apart from my applique apron, was a bag. And I'm going to play some footage that I made while I was making it. It's one I designed a while back. I put it on my blog as a photo tutorial, and I called it the Caroline bag because my sister's name is Caroline. And it's a pouch that has a snap closure, and it's really cute, if I say so myself. And I thought I would sew another one up and film myself doing it. I have speeded up some of it because otherwise, you know, you'd probably be nodding off. But it's not a full tutorial. It's an accompaniment maybe to the photo tutorial on my blog, or just a fun thing I wanted to do. And I don't have any ones from before to show you because I ended up giving them all away. So I won't show you it until after I've played the other footage, and then we'll have a look at the finished result. So this bag can be made with solid pieces of fabric, or you can piece two pieces together to make the top and the bottom different, or you can do patchwork. But what I did with one of them is I had some of these strips made up. So if you ever go to Karen and Just Get It Done Quilts, she shows you how to make these sorts of things. It's on adding machine paper, and you just use scraps that are a little bit wider than the adding machine paper, and you just sew them on there and make this scrappy strip. She makes hers 18 inches long and then ends up using them in scrap quilts or whatever. But I made one a while back that was really cute, and I put black fabric either side of the scrappy strip, and it looked lovely. But of course the picture's on my blog and I don't have the bag anymore. So rather than use these existing ones that have been sitting in my scrap bag, I thought I'd make a new strip today. This bag here is all my small scraps. I could probably make a lot out of those because there's rather a lot of them. So I've got my strip of paper, which I've made about 13 inches long, because the bag pieces are 12 inches wide cut, and I want to make sure I've got a little bit extra. And I have a piece of denim for the main pieces. It's not very heavy. It is a new fabric piece. It's not upcycled from jeans or anything, but it'll work perfectly for this. And I've got some, what inspired the colour scheme was this fabric. It's a very springy fabric with flowers and bunnies and chicks, and I thought, great, we'll go with the green, yellow and pink colour scheme for the strip down the centre. So along with my springy looking things, I've got a bit of a daffodil one and a little bit of a green flowery one, and some of this pink, a little bit of a pink batik, and another pink. So I'm going to just make up my 13-inch strip out of these scraps here and use that as the centre part of my bag, and then probably the back of the bag will just be straight denim. But a short stitch length is good because you want your paper to come out. Once you've sewn this piece to something else and it's stable, you take the paper out. So don't do what I did the first time I made this bag and forget to take the paper out and then realize belatedly that you're going to have to unstitch the bag to get the papers out. Not a good plan. I'm going to go press this and trim it, and I'll show you what it looks like. So much prettier without all the raggedy bits on the sides. I trimmed it with 1/4 of an inch of the fabric sticking out, and when I seam it to the other pieces of fabric, I can follow the edge of the paper, and then I can take the papers out. So these are the pieces of bag so far. The top rectangle is the back of the bag, 12 wide by 9 tall. The piece below that is my piece strip that I just made, which is 2 1/4 inch wide at the moment. It will end up being 1 3/4 inches once it's been sewn to the pieces of denim either side of it. I've made the bottom piece of denim a little wider than the top piece because I'm going to box the bottom of the bag, so I don't want it to look too low when I'm finished. And I've deliberately made them a little bit tall so that after I've sewn them to the colourful strip, I can trim it to the right size to match the back. That piece is the handle there at the bottom, and this is the fabric I've chosen for my lining. Now it's a good idea to make sure that your lining somewhat coordinates with your outer, because you will see a little bit of it around the top of the bag when it's finished. And now this piece is ready. I seamed it. I pressed the seam allowances towards the pieced strip because it was less bulky that way. The denim is a little bulky if you try to do it the other way. And I've trimmed the rectangle to 12 inches wide by 9 inches tall, trimmed the excess pieced strip, and it all looks very neat and tidy and ready to go now. In addition to the outer fabric and lining, we need some pieces of thermolam, which is fusible fleece, a couple of little squares which will go behind the snaps in the pocket, I think, if I can remember how I made this, so that it interfaces and strengthens the area where the pull is. And a pocket piece. If you've got a one-way print, when you've folded it and sewn it, just make sure your pocket is the right way around so your print is the right way up. And I've decided to go for pink snaps on the outside and the inside. Obviously you could use 2 or 3 different colours if you wanted to, but I'm going for pink. It's a new day and I'm ready to work some more on my bag. I have fused the thermolam to the back of these pieces. Now you'd think I'd be good at fusing interfacing without making it bubble these days. And the last bag I made, it got a little rough, so I made sure to get the water out of my iron today. It doesn't seem to have a functionality for switching off the steam when there's water in it. So I tipped the water out and I used a not too hot dry iron on the thermolam, and it looks great. So I don't know if that's just because it's denim and it's less likely to look bubbly, or if I did it right this time. So that's done. I realized that the challenge of demoing this bag is that I have the instructions on my blog and I'm using the same phone to film this, so I had to quickly write myself out a list of what to do, so I got it all in the right order. This is one of these fabrics that looks the same both sides, almost the same. Okay, so this is the pocket piece. I'm going to fold this in half this way, and I'm going to sew the sides into here and then leave a gap for turning. So there it is. I've left a little gap here. I'm going to trim my corners, and then I am going to turn it right side out, press it. Before I do anything else with this pocket, I'm going to insert a little square of thermolam. This is what this little approximately 1-inch square was for. I'm going to put it up inside and I'm going to fuse it in there, right up near the top in the middle, because when there's a snap on it, it'll give it something to grab instead of just pulling on the cotton. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not going to close up this gap because it will get closed up when I sew it to the interior piece, but I am going to top stitch this folded edge here. Now this is where it would have been nice to have some pink thread on the machine, but I don't think I'm going to be that picky. Now we're going to take one of our inside pieces. Again, they look so similar on both sides, but I think that's the brighter side. And I'm going to measure down about 3 inches from the top. Just find the halfway point. Find the halfway point on the pocket. Match them up. You don't want the pocket too high because it's going to get in the way later when you put the snaps in. You don't want to be putting your snaps right through the pocket. Now one more little square thermolam is going to go behind where I'm going to be putting my snaps. So I know that it's going to be behind here. So I just need to flip it over and add the thermolam back there where the back of the snap will be. You can feel if it's lined up behind the other square thermolam in the pocket. All done. Now I'm going to add the snap to the middle of the pocket. Just going to double check where my center is using this little ruler, and I'm going to mark it with a friction pen. I love these pens. I think they're by Pilot. They're erasable gel pens, and I know they weren't designed for fabrics, and I know that they can potentially show again when it's cold, but they're heat erasable, so that means that you can iron them off. I usually don't put these lines anywhere where they're likely to be a problem if they do come back. So mostly I'm confident using them to mark things on my sewing, and then they just iron away. I'm going to put the snap in just below my top stitching, so I'm not making a hole right through it. And I'm going to go through both layers at once, so it all lines up straight from the start. A little bit of a push to start with because you've got a few layers there. So we'll put the decorative top of the snap onto the front. It doesn't really matter which way you do this, I suppose. You need a male side and a female side. So an innie and an outie. So what I'll do is I'll put an outie on the back of here. It pushes on and holds itself there while I get my pliers and then clamp it on. It is important to make sure that you get this lined up well. If your pliers are a little bit off, then it makes a mess of the thing inside there, and these things are no fun to try and get off again to redo. And that part is finished. For the handle, I have already folded it and pressed it. It's a long thin strip. You're just folding it in half and opening it, folding the edges in, but not right to the fold because you need to allow a bit of room for the bulk, and then fold it again. So it's 4 thicknesses of denim there. I'm just going to sew along the edges of that to hold it all together. The next step is we're going to go back to our front piece, and if you've done what I have and inserted a decorative piece, just make sure it's the right way up, because the wider solid should be at the bottom. And then I'm going to take the interior piece that doesn't have the pocket and sew them together across the top edge. And then I'm going to take my back outer piece and my pocket piece and sew those together across the top edge. One of the things I've done with this bag is I've made the lining 9.5 inches instead of 9 inches. And that's because when I made the first one, I realized that the thermolam was being so sturdy at the top hem that it didn't want to fold down nicely. So I just let it stay up, and I ended up with this cute little contrast trim around the top of the bag. And so now I do it all the time on this bag. The next step is to grab the prepared handle and fold it, and I like to make sure that the neat folded edge is on top and the somewhat messier looking seam side is on the other side. It doesn't really matter what side you put your handle. It depends if you're left-handed or right-handed, I suppose, as to what your preference is. I'm going to put it on the right side, and I'm going to clip that there. So it just needs to go somewhere in this area on the front of the bag towards the top. Raw edges matching like that. And then I'm going to baste it in place. This is going to be a lot of layers. And once you've added all the accoutrements that you want to your bag, it's time to sew the pieces together. We've got the back lining and outer, we've got the front lining and outer, and we're just going to put them face to face, right sides together, matching linings, matching outers. Now that I've done that, I just need to sew all the way around. I'm going to start over here in the lining, go all the way around, and then finish leaving a turning gap in that bottom lining piece. I realised as I was sewing around that I'd left my stitch length at 3 again. Too bad. It had a little conniption right here. It had all these layers where the strap is, or handle, and it got a little jammed up. So what I've learned now is that if the machine decides to get stuck and make that terrifying noise, it's just to wait a few seconds, it stops it, I can manually take the needle out and put it back down again. It's nothing to panic about. This is where my quilting ruler comes in really handy, because I want to draw a 3/4 inch square on each corner, and it's so easy with one of these. I'll do it on the table and then I'll show you. So the thing to remember when you draw a little square to box your bottom, you always take it from a seam. You don't take it from the edge of the fabric. Sometimes you might have done a fold at the bottom and you just have a seam here, a seam line here. So you always take it from where it's going to be finished on the outside. So if I had a fold here, I'd measure from the edge. But when you've got a seam line, you measure it from the seam line. That way you get a proper square. It does cut through your seam, but as long as you're careful, then your stitches shouldn't undo. Right, so my corners are ready. Now all you have to do is stick your finger in here, and then you squish it so that your seams are matching. And your edges are matching. You can either press your seams out open like this, or you can press one left, one right. It doesn't really matter. So here they are, sewn. They're looking a little wonky on the inside, but the important thing is what they look like on the outside. We won't know that until we turn it right side out. Before I turn it right side out, I'm going to press the seams open, especially in this area where the top of the bag is going to be. It's really nice to have your seams neat ahead of time, so you don't have to go and fiddle around with it later. Another good reason to press your seam allowances is that where you have your turning gap, if you have pre-pressed your seam allowance back, it's so much easier to do a neat job of closing that up later. Okay, now for the moment of truth. This is where you find out whether you did a decent job of your seaming, and especially your boxy bottoms. Before I get too far into this, I'm just going to check these corners. Not too worried about the lining corners because they're going to be on the inside. Ooh. I don't know if you can see that because the denim is so dark. That one worked out nicely. Oh, and that one did too. Awesome. Now the other place I want it to be neat is here. I want this to be nicely lined up, and it's pretty good. So a little trick I've learned is not to close up your lining gap too early on, but to do your top stitching of the top of your bag first. The reason for that, sometimes you have to fiddle with the seam allowances to get it nice around the top, and you can't do that so easily if you've closed everything up inside. So you can see how the pink around the top is just naturally falling into place because of the seam allowances of the denim and the thermolam. It just naturally wants to do that. So I'm going to put some clips around the top just to hold it there while I top stitch it. And now to just line up my edges and the bottom of the lining, and sew as close to the edge as I can. Again, if you were really picky, or making this as a gift where you felt it mattered, you could certainly change your thread out now to a more matching one. but I'm not gonna. Okay, so I just sewed pretty close to the edge so that the lining gap is sealed up. I've chosen to have 2 snaps on the front of my bag. There's no reason why you can't just do 1 or more than 2. You can just stab the awl all the way through all the layers. That way you're not faffing about trying to figure out if your snaps are lined up. And the bag is finished. I'd be interested in receiving your comments to let me know if you like this slow making kind of video. I know so many of us now, we're probably watching those sewing tutorials that are triple speed, no talking, absolute basic information, and sometimes that's what you need and what you want. I know a friend of mine has made a comment that she doesn't like chatty tutorials, and really, if I was making a proper tutorial, I probably would have had a better camera angle. But this is already published on my blog, and as I say, I'll put that in the description box below where you can find it, and all the measurements and the instructions are there along with a photo tutorial. But I thought I'd just have a bit of fun making a new bag and film myself making it, and it might just add a little bit more understanding to it if you're new to bag making. So I think that's really pretty. I think that's gift worthy. And I'm sure I'll be making more of those. So here's the finished bag. Here's the back. And here's the front. I think it worked out really well with the pink. These snaps are pretty strong. And then the lining. And it has the snap pocket on the inside as well. Pretty easy to make. You could make it in any fabric, any combination of fabrics. I do like it with this patchwork panel down the center, or as 2 separate colors. I've made the other couple I made had 2 colors on the front. I like to be able to see those snaps, and it has the handle. So I think that would make a pretty nice project bag for a small project, and there's no zipper to catch your yarn as it's feeding out of the bag. In fact, you could keep the snaps shut while you're feeding the yarn out. That would be quite useful. So do let me know if you make one. That would look really, really cute in a smaller size as well. Ideas. Maybe a coordinating one in a smaller size. Perhaps I will make that one day. Well, that's it for this week. I'm trying to keep these vlogs from getting too long. I think 20 to 30 minutes is probably a good length. Sometimes you don't want to sit through 40 minutes to an hour of people waffling on. Even a 20-minute one, sometimes I haven't got time to watch. It depends what it is and how many subscriptions are popping up in my YouTube feed. But I do try and watch them beginning to end if I can. I really hope you liked what you saw today, and if you like it, please hit the like button and subscribe too if you can. Hope you have an awesome week or two till I see you again. Thanks for watching. Bye.